So, Mr. Guthrie Govan, welcome to LineaRock.
Thank you.
And video interview. So we would like to know you a little bit better and know about your career, your story, and your future projects. So I have a few questions for you.
Cool.
You are here in Italy for some guitar clinics.
It's true.
Is that correct? Okay. How do you lead these kind of events? Do you have your own pattern, or do you actually accept questions from fans, from the people that come to them?
Totally. I found there's no point in having a detailed plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because every crowd of people is different. Every group of guitar players has its own set of concerns.
Yeah.
So generally I'll turn up at a clinic, I'll play a song, tell them my life story in 2 minutes, and then say, right, what do you guys want to know about? You tell me what to talk about, and that way I know at least one person is interested in what I'm saying.
All right.
It's strange for me to do clinics because I'm completely self-taught, but but I've taught a lot of other people how to play guitar over the years. So I guess what I try to do is teach people how to be self-taught.
Okay, that's bizarre. That's good. I mean, that's very strange. Actually, you are completely self-taught. You never ever took a lesson. Guitar lesson.
My father showed me about 5 chords when I was very young, when I was 3. And then he said, that's it, that's all I know. But there's my record collection.
Okay.
So I used to slow down lots of Hendrix and Clapton and Beatles. And
so from that on, you did it on your own?
Yeah.
Just listening to music?
Yeah. I mean, later on I started reading books. I would go to the library and find books about music theory, but it always started with the sound.
Yeah.
And then I would find the words to describe the sounds.
And what kind of people usually come to your guitar clinics? It's young, old, all musicians, or maybe men? Just men?
Come to my clinics, mostly. Yeah, I get a lot of the sort of the younger shredder guys with the Ibanez guitar and the ponytail and the notebook. Sometimes I'll get some of the older blues guys, but yeah, I guess a lot of them are pretty young.
And what's the most weird question that you got on a guitar clinic?
I think the weirdest ones were at a school in Pasadena, when they would say things like, do you recommend the use of recreational drugs to become more creative? So I'm in a guitar school. What do you think I'm going to say? Your teacher who hired me is sitting at the back of the room. Don't be silly.
All right.
And at the same clinic, someone else said, how is it possible to practice a lot and also have a girlfriend? It's like, that's not the kind of question I was hoping for. You know, I was hoping more for how do I play over a dominant 7th chord or something like that. But it's all good. It's nice to be surprised at clinics. What
do you think that makes your clinics special? A lot of guitarists, you know, used to do these kind of things, but what is special on a Guthrie Govan clinic?
I guess every clinic is special because it's a certain personality and a certain musician as an individual, as a character, who's giving the clinic. So what you get is an insight into how that player thinks. So I guess that's what's special about my clinics, but that doesn't mean I'm awesome. That's what's special about everyone else's clinics as well. It's an individual thing, and rather than a normal guitar lesson in a school, where you would say, all right, today we're going to learn these 3 scale shapes. Go home and learn those scale shapes. This is more about people who would come to see the player because they like the player and they have questions that are specific to like the way, say, I play, if that makes sense.
Yes, of course. Do you use any pre-recorded tracks during the clinics, just your own music, or also music from other artists?
I have backing tracks for some of the music on my album, so I'll play along with that if people want me to. To be honest, I don't enjoy it that much. I'd much prefer to play my music with a real band. Because to me it's like jazz but a lot louder, and it's nice to be able to interact with the other people. And of course, this is my backing band for most clinics, and it doesn't listen to me. It just plays the song and I have to do the same thing every night, and it's not fun. It's not very rock and roll, but people like it, so I do a little bit. I also have a pedal on the floor which I can use to loop
All
a section of playing, so I can just write a song at the clinic, record it, and then play over the top of it. So that's nice. It's a bit like playing with someone else.
Did it ever happen that you wrote a song during a clinic? Actually, something that you develop after, or?
Oh, I never revisit them. As soon as the clinic's over, I've forgotten. But
okay.
Yeah, I normally write something at every clinic. It's not very good, but it's always something slightly new.
So you said that you started playing at 3 years old. Was that your own decision, your own choice, or was your father actually that said, you must check out the guitar, could be cool, or how did it happen?
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, you were pretty young, 3 years old, you know.
I remember learning my first chord, but I don't remember much about life before that. So I don't know if I said, I want to play guitar, or if my dad said, I think it would be funny to take a photo of our small child trying to play guitar. It could have happened anyway. But certainly I grew up in a house where there was always a guitar in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
We were always exposed to music, not just as a background thing. Everyone in my family grew up appreciating that music is a serious thing and that you should listen to it. It's not just wallpaper. It should go on quietly in the background whilst you lead your life. You can sit there and appreciate music as a work of art. So we all grew up thinking that. And I guess any kid in that situation would put 2 and 2 together and say, okay, music is a serious thing, and I feel good when I listen to music. There's a tool over there that you can use to make music. I want to make music.
Yeah. So that, I mean, as every child, that was your dream, to make a living out of music, or it simply happened?
No, it was more like why does anyone choose to learn a language? Like in your case, perhaps, why did you decide to learn Italian? You didn't.
Yeah.
All you know is now you speak Italian, and it's really helpful, and it's part of the way you think. And music for me was like that. It's just, I grew up surrounded by music, and I learned the language of music the same way I learned the language of English. It was never a conscious decision, really.
Very natural thing.
And in terms of trying to make a living out of it, I don't know. I'm still trying to work out how to make a living out of it.
How long do you practice every day?
I don't really.
You don't?
No.
That's amazing. I mean, you're very good.
Well, I try. I've played a lot over the years, but I think there's maybe a difference between playing and practicing. And to me, practice is an ugly word.
All right.
Practice means locking yourself in a room and doing an exercise over and over again.
Yes.
And I never had the attention span for that. All I ever wanted to do was play the sounds that I heard in my head, or copy the sounds I heard on a record, and try and make everything sound good. So for me, it's always been fun. I've never needed that discipline element, because I've always just wanted to play.
And that's because you're self-taught, maybe, because of that? I mean, it's something that is just a feeling. You let it go and you play.
Possibly. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that needs improvement in what I do is stuff I can improve without touching a guitar. My fingers pretty much know where to go to make the sounds that I would need to make.
Yeah.
It's all about the music up here. If I'm trying to copy the sounds that I hear in my head, then the way to get better is to make the music in my head more interesting. So a lot of that happens just by thinking about music, which I can do when I'm sitting on a train, or trying to feed myself new music. I'm always looking for new things to listen to, and new things to inspire me. And that's as close to practice as I get. It's all up there.
Yeah. How many guitars do you own at the moment?
Let me think. I probably have about 15 stringed instruments, but one of them is a banjo.
Okay.
A couple of them are cheap acoustic guitars. 3 of them are basses.
Okay.
So, I don't know, I have a few guitars, but I know doctors and lawyers who can hardly play, who have more guitars than me. So I don't feel bad about it.
Right.
And I can justify every instrument I own. It's there for a very special reason.
All right, good. Do you have any favorite one? The favorite guitar, the one that you pick, you know, naturally, maybe?
There's a favourite guitar that I would take to any gig. which is lurking in that bag behind you.
Right.
I have to like it because it's made by a company called Sir.
Okay.
We have a kind of relationship, and it's my signature model, which means I help to design the spec of the guitar. So I have to like it because it's exactly what I asked for. And on a more emotional level, I also really like my old Gibson SG.
Yeah.
Because it was the first good guitar I ever had, so it's like a part of my history. But I would never take it on tour in case it got damaged or stolen, and I'd just be destroyed.
Because it's a matter of heart.
Yeah.
You know.
It's like a family photo album.
Okay.
You know, it's different from the workhorse guitar that does everything, and it's reliable.
And concerning your signature model that you just mentioned, what do you actually need from a guitar? How did you design it, and what was your request for the instrument, the special request?
Well, a lot of the problems a guitarist would face when looking for the perfect guitar, a lot of those problems have disappeared already as soon as you go to the Sir factory, because everything they do is very consistent. They're very well made, they're very playable, it's very resonant, and those guys really know about how the different woods you use will affect the tone of the guitar. And that's not just about finding the best piece of wood for the body and the best piece of wood for the neck.
Yeah.
It's like a good marriage of different woods, and they're good at combining things to make something that's greater than the sum of the parts. So through working with those guys for years, I've learned a lot of their wood voodoo, and I have some idea what different woods will sound like, and I discovered that mahogany is the tree that sounds the closest to the guitar I imagine in my head. So generally I'll go for a mahogany guitar and then use different pickups and different wiring to get the other sounds. But I guess really it starts as the sound of a Gibson SG or something like Angus Young or Frank Zappa in the 70s, and that's what I think a guitar should sound like. And then all the wiring and the tricks we can use to make it sound like a Fender Strat or whatever.
Do you use a different gear live and in the studio, or it's pretty much the same one?
Pretty much the same. I mean, my live gear varies slightly depending on the gig. Like last year I did a lot of gigs with a rapper called Dizzy Rascal, and no one over here has heard of him, but in England he's huge. Everything he releases goes to the top of the pop charts and stays there. So it was a pretty high pressure gig. You can't afford for anything to go wrong. And I changed my rig quite a lot to work for that gig. So. And
was that simply a job? I mean, or did you find any emotion during also that kind of music, which is very distant from what you do usually?
Essentially it was a job, but I really enjoyed doing it. I think whatever music you play, there's a way to enjoy just trying to do it as well as possible and trying to fit in with the spirit of the music and trying to be part of something bigger than just one musician. And certainly as someone who normally does a gig and the front row is all people with binoculars and notepads and filming it on their phone and analysing it, a gig like that where you've got 100,000 people in a field and everyone knows the words to the song and everyone likes the song and they're going crazy, you know, I'm grateful that I got to experience that.
Which are your major influences as a guitarist and as a composer as well, if they are different?
Well, I try to be a musician rather than a guitarist. I don't care about guitar just for the sake of guitar. Guitar is a typewriter. It's not the book that you're writing, it's just the typewriter. But I guess everything I've ever heard has been an influence. Even the stuff I don't like has influenced me by showing me exactly what I don't want to sound like. But then I guess a few really important things would be all the 50s rock and roll stuff when I was very young. It was pre-army Elvis, I thought was great. Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, all that good stuff. The Beatles really got me into interesting chord progressions and harmonies at an early age. I guess Eric Clapton, when he was in Cream, that era, that's how I learned that a guitar could be like the singer in a band and the guitar could play the melody and it could be the voice. Hendrix obviously reinvented the whole instrument in every way imaginable. But the thing I learned about him, well, the thing I learned the most from Hendrix was probably the way he didn't have rhythm guitar playing and then lead guitar playing as two separate entities. He was just playing guitar, and he would play melodic lines in his rhythm playing, and he would play rhythmic stuff in his solo playing. And I remember just listening to that stuff and thinking, this guy is just playing whatever he wants to play. He's completely free. That's cool. In terms of the technical stuff, I guess Yngwie Malmsteen, massive influence, not just because of the speed of it, but when Yngwie plays loads of notes, it sounds like he means them. He plays with passion, he plays with sincerity, and a lot of the clones that came out missed that part. They just copied the technique and missed the spirit behind it. But Yngwie, whatever other people might say about Yngwie, he's a real guitar player, you know.
So from 2000 to 2006, you've been part of Asia. Is that correct?
Roughly. I think I started playing with Asia in about '99 on an album called Aura.
Yeah.
They called me in at the last minute as a session player.
All right.
Just to fill in lots of holes on the album. And I guess they liked what I did, because the next thing I knew, I was on a tour bus supporting Paul Rodgers. And yeah, and that I carried on being a member of Asia until it all got a bit complicated a few years back when the original members did their reunion tour, which is cool. But it's an awkward situation where you end up with two bands called Asia. It was far too confusing.
But did you enjoy, was that actually, it started as a job, as far as I'm concerned. Was that a cool thing? I mean, a great experience? Do you have good memories about it?
Yeah, mostly because I liked the people in the band. That's hugely important if you're going to be trapped on a tiny, smelly tour bus with the same bunch of people 24 hours a day for a whole tour. You know, it's not just about whether they're good players or whether you enjoy the music. So do you get on as human beings? Because if you don't, you need a proper job. Yeah. And fortunately, I thought they were all really nice guys. And certainly that was the first time I'd done any touring on that level, that kind of intensity. And yeah, it was a great experience for me. I've seen some very strange parts of the world as a result of doing that. And I made some friends, so it's all good. And
what about Docker's Guild, the Mystic Technocracy? I read that you're involved in that record, which is brand new. Can you tell us?
I'm impressed that you know about that.
Can you tell us more about it?
You probably know more about it than I do. But there's a very, very good keyboard player called Douglas Docker, who I believe lives somewhere near Torino. He's not Italian, or if he is, his English is incredibly good. But he lives near Torino, and I guess he and I have a common friend in Simon Hanhart, the producer who was responsible for the first Asia album I played on. And he needed a guitarist to do lots of guitar parts in a hurry. It's a bit like the Asia story all over again. The producer recommended me. Yeah. Douglas said, okay, do you think you could play on about 4 songs? We have this many days. So, okay, I can do that. And I recorded these parts remotely, just at home, with my home setup, and then emailed him the files. And every time I finished another song, he would email me back and say, yeah, that sounds great, but there's just one other thing. There's been another problem. Can you do 5 songs instead of 4? Can you do 6 instead of 5? And I think I'm pretty much on the whole album now. All right. One of the weirdest things about that was when he sent me one of the tracks to play on, and I loaded it up into my sequencer and pressed play and thought, hang on, I know that voice. And it was John Payne from Asia. All right. He was a guest vocalist on one of the songs. So. But I think people will like that. So it was a big family. Yeah, it was very incestuous, this whole prog thing. But no, I think people will like the album when it comes out. I haven't heard the finished product yet, but from having worked with rough mixes and stuff like that, there's some interesting people playing on it. You've got Goran Edmond singing, you've got Tony Franklin and Greg Bissonette, guys like that. The guy from TNT. You know, there's quite a who's who of that style of music.
Yeah, but the weird thing about this kind of project is that you never meet with all the other guys. I mean, everybody works at home on his own parts. How does it work?
I think you just need one guy to be the mastermind.
Yeah.
And just monitor what everyone's doing and check all the files that are coming in.
Yeah.
So it's like mission control.
Right.
It's like Houston when they send the
Yes.
rocket to the moon. It's all about Houston saying like,
yeah,
this is what we need to do. And I guess Douglas was that guy. He was controlling the whole project and giving us feedback.
And everybody can do their own thing. I mean, you created your own parts, or you had any guides or any...
A bit of both. I think with anything like that, you have to respect the fact that whoever is paying you and whoever wrote the song has a certain vision of what that music has to sound like, and you have to respect that. And part of doing the job well is trying to guess what they're hearing in their head and then make that sound.
Yeah.
But there were other parts where he said, well, I've heard you on the Asia album, just be yourself
and,
between 4 minutes and 32 and 6 minutes 05. Do that Guthrie thing and then go back to following orders.
Yeah.
So a mixture of both.
Right. You released a solo album entitled Erotic Cakes in 2006. Are you working on a new one? I mean, solo album. Do you have any schedule on this kind of project, or is it just a matter of inspiration and whenever you're ready, you do it?
Well, I've got some stuff tucked away at home for that album. I think it would be finished by now, except that I got distracted by another project that excited me even more. I don't know if this is something you were planning to mention later on, but there's a new band project we're doing called The Aristocrats, which happened completely by accident in January of this year. Every January I go to Anaheim in California just to be at the NAMM show.
Yeah, okay.
And on this occasion I got an email from Brian Bella, who plays bass with Mike Keneally. He's done a couple of tours with Steve Vai, I think. Basically, I was very well aware of his work, great player. And the email said, "Hi Guthrie, you don't know me, I'm Brian Bella." And then needlessly he explained all the things that he does. And he said, "I have a trio gig I've got to do at the NAMM show with Greg Howe, guitar player, and Marco Minimum, astonishingly capable drummer. Now Greg can't do it. The gig's in about a week. Can you learn some songs and help us out?" So I jammed with these guys at the NAMM show, and I think it was very well received. There was a certain energy at the gig, and at the end everyone in the trio looked around at each other and we were all smiling and said, "We should do more of this," because it just felt right. So for once, something in my musical life actually happened quite quickly. We went to a studio in Chicago and recorded the whole album in about a week, 3 songs each. It's being mixed right now, and hopefully there'll be a finished product within a couple of months. And it's all very exciting, very fun, but it distracted me from my solo album, and I don't care, because this is something else that interests me. I think that's what you have to do. If you're a kind of musician freelancing like that, you just follow the things that you find interesting, and hopefully you attract the kind of crowd who agree and have similar tastes.
So a solo album is in the plans, but we don't know when. Okay.
It will happen, but I don't feel any pressure to get it finished by a certain date. It'll be ready when it's ready. Yeah. And it'll be better that way.
In 1993, you've been elected Guitarist of the Year. What that meant to you, and that changed, in a sense, your career? You had a different exposition for that, or?
Honestly, not really. I should add, I don't really think of music as a competition.
All right.
People would come up to me after that and say, "Oh, so you're the best guitarist in the UK?" It's like, well, I don't think so. You know, Alan Holdsworth didn't enter the competition. Gary Moore didn't enter the competition. It's just of the bored kids who could be bothered to enter the competition, I was the one who got lucky. It doesn't mean anything. Really, I won just because I thought I might make some connections with the UK guitar magazines who might be able to get me some work or something like that. I thought it might be nice to win an amp because I was a very poor child. And it worked. I got a very nice amp out of winning that competition, but then nothing happened. And I went back to working at McDonald's, and so, is that it? So about a year later I wrote to the magazines who had sponsored the competition and said, "Remember when you said I was good at playing guitar? Well, have you got any work for someone who's good at playing guitar?" And I started a career of transcribing guitar solos and things for the magazines.
How would you define yourself? I mean, more jazz, fusion, blues, or rock guitarist, or a bit of all of them?
Yeah, it's just music.
Music, okay.
I hate pigeonholing things. The only good reason to have to put music into a category is because it can help you to sell it. It helps people to waste less of their time when they're looking for music that they think they might like. Yeah. So I like the word fusion. Because all that means is take all the different stuff you like, put it in a big bowl and cook it all together. Unfortunately, fusion has been kind of kidnapped by a certain kind of soft West Coast, very overproduced type of easy listening. Yeah. So a lot of people hear the word fusion and they're turned off by it. And to me, fusion means what the Mahavishnu Orchestra were doing all those years ago, or what Billy Cobham was doing in the early 70s. And it's become a cliche, it's become a genre now, and people can copy those blends of influences. But at the time, when those guys first did it, it was something revolutionary and something very brave. So let's take jazz notes and play them with a rock instrument and then add loads of Indian influence, and what are we going to call it? Let's call it fusion. So the spirit of fusion is a good concept.
And the spirit of rock and roll too. I mean, because you said you're self-taught, and you know exactly what to do. You have a good technique, a great technique, but it's a matter of art for you. So it's also like more bluesy and rock and roll in the spirit than is that? I mean, a definition that fits for those who don't know your style. What do you think?
I guess it's probably cleverer than normal rock, but it's louder than normal jazz. So somewhere in there,
in between.
So maybe it's the worst of both worlds. I don't know, but I think the important thing for me is whatever you're going to play it like you mean it.
Yeah.
Like when we were talking about Yngwie, and just because someone is very technically capable doesn't mean it should be enough just for them to play things that are difficult to play. Yeah. It's like, I don't care how long you practiced that for. Does it sound good? Does it move me? Does it sound like you mean that?
So you mentioned before that you were working in a fast food. So that sound, the typical dream that you made it, because now you're doing what you wanted to do exactly, and you're developing and building a career. So what would you suggest to somebody that's still dreaming about doing this for a living? It's a matter just of fortune, of dedication, passion. What is it? Mix of everything? Or?
Okay, it's a mix of everything. I've finally reached a point where I can fly halfway across the world, and when I get to my destination, like 9 time zones away, someone at the airport will recognise me, which has never been the case before. Now, is that because I started playing when I was 3, and I did my first gig when I was 5, and I was on national TV in the UK when I was 9, or because I won that competition in '93, or because I joined Asia? No, it's none of that. I've tried all these things for decades of my life. That's not why people recognise me. It's because of a few random clips of me jamming along with backing tracks on YouTube. I didn't even put them up there. I didn't tell anyone to watch them. Maybe they're good clips, maybe they're not, but there's an element of luck there.
Yeah.
Because there are lots of great clips of people playing guitar really well on YouTube. Some people get lucky, some people don't. Don't ask me how it works. But in terms of anyone who wants to follow the dream, or whatever, remember the following: music doesn't owe you anything. As soon as you start expecting music to kind of give you a pension or a handout every week, it's like, no. Music's just music, and it makes you happy. That's enough. It doesn't owe you a living.
Yeah.
Play music because you have to, and you can't help it, and you can't imagine a life where you didn't play music. Yeah. And that way, you can never be disappointed. Because it's a weird business. It doesn't make sense. There isn't a normal scheme of if you try really hard, you can be promoted and your wage will go up. It kind of doesn't make sense to me as a business model. I don't know if any of that adds up to be a complete answer. One other thing I'll share with you, this is not my quote, I think it was Steve Swallow who played bass with Pat Metheny. He said, if you want to be a musician as a career, don't do it. If you have to be a musician, it's the best job in the world.
Yeah. Good one.
I wish I'd said that.
You just did, but it's from somebody else. All right.
I'm a plagiarist.
Which is your main goal at the moment?
Just keep doing what I'm doing, really.
So you just live day by day, and what comes, comes, and...
yeah, I think it's nice to remain a child as much as possible, and to say, if something distracts me one day, it's, oh, that's interesting, I want to do that. I'll do it, you know, so long as it's something that excites me. Because I think I'll play better in situations that I find challenging and interesting. Yeah. It's a nice goal to try and be part of something that doesn't already exist.
Yes.
Which is why even when I mentioned playing with a rapper, playing this pop music, but that, I'm quite proud of being involved with that. Because this rapper had a 12-piece band with a really good horn section and incredible backing singers. We had, for one of the gigs, we had a big string section. We had a 20-person male voice choir from some church. Basically, there were more people on stage than there were in the audience. And rappers don't do that. And I thought, cool, this is the first time this kind of gig has ever happened, quite like this. And I'm on stage, I'm a tiny part of it, this feels good. You know? Yeah. So it doesn't matter what the style is, but if you're making something new or interesting happen, then
it's good.
That's enough of a reason to do it.
Just last question. 3 guitarists that you consider absolute in music history, and 3 guitarists that are completely overrated in your opinion.
Okay, I'll start with the easier one. Okay, like 3 people who were really important in the development of the guitar?
Yes.
Les Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I hope everyone's familiar with just how incredible Les Paul was.
Yes. He
just invented all of the shit that we use now, and somehow managed to be a chart-topping pop musician at the same time. He was the Da Vinci of guitar, I think. Hendrix. I don't need to explain why Hendrix was important. I need one more. It's tempting to say someone like Chet Atkins, and all the rock guys would maybe question that, but hugely important. I think a lot of the rock and roll guitarists, like when rock and roll was a young form of music and they didn't have a huge canon of historical figures to look for. So what was the previous generation of rock and roll guitarists playing? Well, there wasn't one. A lot of these guys were looking to the more technically accomplished guys like Chet to work out. You look at someone like Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
I think he got a lot of what he does from players like that.
All right.
Even though you can't hear similarities.
And the 3 overrated?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay, all the others.
it doesn't matter. If you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything at all.
All right. Good. That's a good point. There's also one thing that I saw on YouTube that you do, playing riffs of, and you know, from other guitarists, and you have the same sound. Is that something that you do always during your clinic, or just if somebody asks? No.
This is great. I have an excuse to apologise for that. I did that for one of the guitar magazines.
All right.
The background was they had a reader's poll where you had to vote for who you thought was the best guitarist in each of 20 different categories.
So you pick...
And there were some stupid categories, like best strumming. And everyone just said Pete Townsend because they couldn't think of anyone else who strummed. There are flamenco guys who would disagree, you know, but the public had spoken. So then the magazine said to me, as a regular contributor, it's like, okay, we've got this reader's poll. How do you feel about writing like a 3-minute piece of music where you just pastiche everyone who won? And I looked at the list and I said, so you want a piece of music that's got James Taylor and Zakk Wylde? You are mad, right? And they said, no, we think you can do it. And I thought, actually, I do need the money. I do have to pay some bills this month. Okay, I accept your ridiculous challenge. And did that thing for the magazine.
Okay.
And the audio was on the CD that came with the magazine, and I thought, that's the end of it. I'm not proud of that. It's not something I would do of my own choice.
All right.
But then the curse of YouTube is some kid will find that and go, oh, I'll put that on YouTube. Guthrie Govan shows you how to play in many styles, and they don't tell you how it happened or where it came from. And it turned into quite a popular clip.
Yeah, it is. So.
It's a completely pointless piece of music. I only did it as part of a job. But I'm glad people enjoy it.
Okay, so last thing, let's hear your child, your signature model, and if you want to present it or tell something about it. So, promotion time.
Sir. Here we go. This is my lovely guitar. And now it has frets. Okay, I'll tell you about this. If you're not a guitar player, just put on the kettle or something, make some coffee. This will get better in a minute. But this is a special one. It's got basswood body, plain maple top, roasted maple neck. Now this is what happens when you take a piece of maple and put it in an oven with no oxygen and then burn it. And it's darker than normal maple because all the moisture and all the dirt and the impurities have all been kind of baked out of the wood, and it makes it ring differently, makes it very resonant, and it makes it more stable, which is good for me because I might be in St. Petersburg one day and then be in Caracas the next day, and it's a completely different temperature, different moisture in the air. Most guitar necks will move a lot, and this stuff doesn't move so much. It's very dependable. Stainless steel frets, which are great because they last for a very long time. Non-locking whammy bar. There's a thing at the back which is called a tremolo, and I can tighten these things to stop the whammy bar from moving. And that's great for certain tuning adjustments. What else can I tell you? Oh yeah, and special lacquer. I've discovered that I think this lacquer sounds better than modern lacquer. This is nitrocellulose, is what they used in the 50s. Now, this guitar was made in California, and spraying nitrocellulose lacquer in California is illegal because it's not good for the ozone layer. So what they do, they build the guitar and then they send it to a guy who doesn't live in California. He's in Oregon or somewhere like that. The guy sprays it with poison lacquer and then mails it back to California, and that way it's legal. But this stuff just ages differently. This is not an old guitar, but already it's going like a Stevie Ray Strat. It's getting good-looking injuries. And the resonance is just slightly nicer, I think. So there you go, that's my signature guitar. And I can prove it. That's my name.
Yes. Thank you very much, Guthrie.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for us, and we hope we will have you back at LineaRock soon.
Oh, thank you.